Hi, I'm Mike Harrington, and in 2014, I embarked on a health journey resulting in my losing over 200 pounds on my own. Since then, I've been sharing my story and have become an advocate for healthy living. Welcome to Mike Inspires Me, a podcast show about health, wellness, and amazing people to inspire you to take charge of your life and your health. Today, I thought I'd talk about the topic of self-care. It's probably a subject you've heard a lot in recent years, and especially over the past year with the pandemic. One of the things that's come to light during the pandemic, as I'm sure you've known, is there's been a lot of things besides the dealing with the disease itself and the fact that folks who were in higher health risk categories were also the highest affected by the disease. There were a lot of other factors that dealing with the disease affected, with social isolation, worrying about yourself and or others getting the disease, and just a whole host of things, financial problems, just a lot of things that happened where it became sort of its own pandemic in self-care. I mean, people needed to learn ways to deal with the stress they were dealing with and get themselves in better health. Well, what I want to talk about today is my own personal experiences with self-care and how it really saved my life and keeps me going to this day. Why is it we got to talk about it? Why don't we know what self-care truly is? Now, I mean, from a surface, it sounds like a simple thing, taking care of yourself, right? Self-care. I'm looking on verywellmind.com right now, and I got a nice definition that I like. Self-care describes a conscious act one takes in order to promote their own physical, mental, and emotional health. There are many forms of self-care may take. It could be ensuring you get enough sleep every night or stepping outside for a few minutes for some fresh air. Nice. I think that's a great sort of elevator speech of what self-care is. I want to dive a little deeper into that in, again, my own experiences. And again, why is it we got to talk about that? I mean, don't we get up in the morning and we wash our faces, or take showers, brush our teeth, and brush our hair? I mean, that's self-care, isn't it? Well, certainly it is. There's a lot of things we do, whether consciously or just out of habit, that self-care keeps us going. Because if you don't take care of yourself, right? I mean, things can happen. You don't brush your teeth, you end up with cavities. You know, there's all kinds. You don't brush your hair, you look like a mess. You don't take a shower, you stink. You get skin diseases and whatnot. But what's keeping us from, some of these other things? Why is it that we have to talk about self-care? I mean, you'd think that, we should know. A lot of animals do their own self-care. You see your cat grooming itself, licking himself, right? You see a lot of animals. What is it with us? Why is it that we got to focus on this and tell people about the importance of self-care? Well, I think it comes down to a lot of factors. At least I'm going to talk about from my own personal experience and what I've seen. And one of the things that has become a big topic also is the distractions we have nowadays. And we're inundated with information. We've got phone devices that keep us hooked to each other and hooked to information 24/7. These distractions take away time. In fact, they're a double-edged sword. It's been great. I mean, look here, I'm on the internet now and I'm talking to you, sharing information, and that's a good thing. But on the other hand, as we know, there's a lot with social media that's become to light where people talk about the stress and depression and anxiety that comes from overuse of those things and affecting people's mental health. There's a lot of things that cause us to be distracted with television shows and all kinds of things that take away and give us the perception we have no time. And I often hear people tell me, I don't have the time to exercise. I don't have time to do food prep. I don't have time to take care of myself. And that's a reality of nowadays because, as much as we say, well, you've got to make the time, I think part of it is it's a mind shift. And I think it comes down to folks understanding what their priorities are. We've got a lot of obligations. We've got obligations to friends and family, work, and often we put their needs ahead of ours. But one's got to wonder, if you're putting other people's needs ahead of yours, at some point, your needs to get neglected, your health suffers. So what good are you? If I'm coming into work every day, stressed out because I'm overwhelmed and I'm not taking care of my health because I'm either overworked or stressed, it becomes a thing that affects me at work, my work performance, my ability to deal with the normal stresses, and the same thing with everywhere else in your life. You find yourself when you become short over small things, a lot of times that's an indication that you're neglecting yourself because you're trying to take care of other things and everyone. And as you always hear, you can't please everyone. There's a lot of things that we set ahead of our health and ourselves. And I think that when you really take a step back and you really understand that the time that you invest in yourself, the time that you take, will actually get you ahead. Now, I think about my own life, and for many years, as I had stresses, some normal things, parenting, marriage, financial problems, all the things that come with, adulthood, I never really had a good outlet for dealing with those stressors. As you know, you've heard me say, I often ate my problems or drank alcohol and did things that were not best for my health. They were short-term things that didn't give me the ability to really deal with them in a healthy manner. And in fact, you do them long enough, as you know, you end up with more problems, right? So you end up with 400-pound Mike, who now has a host of other health issues, feeling worse about those things, feeling worse about myself, ending up in a cycle of not taking care of myself, doing the bad things that are keeping me stuck there and feeling hopeless. And I did. I felt hopeless. And sure, I was aware that people exercise, and sure, I was aware of people eating well, and I just didn't see myself there. I didn't see myself doing those things. Kind of ironic, right? Because look at me now. It certainly wasn't an overnight process. It may seem like it, but was one of those things that I had to really examine. And what woke me up, as most of you know, was seeing my own father's lack of self-care, lack of healthy self-care, that is, and how it affected and ended his own life. And when I realized that where I was in life, where my health was not on a good trajectory. And that if I continued to live the way I was living, if I continued to neglect myself, neglect caring for myself, I was going to die. Now, at the time, I said, you've heard the story over and over, but for those of you who don't know, at the time, my father died from lung cancer, from smoking. He also had colon cancer before that, from poor eating. But what I realized was it was his lack of self-care. It was his health habits. Well, healthy. It was his lack of healthy habits. He had habits, they just weren't good ones. Um, but that's what killed him. And I was doing the same thing to myself with different things, with food. And at that time, I was 40 years old, 450 pounds. I don't know what I weighed at the time. I couldn't even find a scale to weigh myself at that time. I had high blood pressure, sleep apnea, pre-diabetes. You've heard the story and you can read up on it. The point is, at 40 years old with those conditions, it was a time bomb. This is to say nothing of the mental problems and emotional issues I was dealing with, right down to the fact that I started to care very little about my own life. In fact, I had made attempts to take my own life because I just didn't see a way out. But I woke up, and it took a while, but I realized that nobody was going to save me from it. I had to take steps myself. This is not to say it isn't good for you to seek it. And that, I believe, is part of self-care, to seek help. And I did. I looked into things. I had been to therapists. I had talked to doctors, nutritionists. I looked into bariatric surgery. Now, for me, I chose to take my own path pretty much by myself. It's not one that I recommend because it's very difficult to do. And I've learned in retrospect that it is important to enlist the help of others. But the point is, from its basic, is that I learned that I had to take care of myself, self-care. I learned that at the end of the day, regardless if I sought doctor's advice or if I attended classes or got a coach or got therapy, it came down to me, my choices, and the things that I was doing. And I had to examine a lot of those things. I had to examine my behaviors. I had to examine my habits and see what was really not working for my good. I mean, it really was affecting my ability to function optimally. I was getting up each day and alive, but I wasn't living truly. And I wasn't at a point where I felt like I had anything in my toolbox, I guess is what I call it today, to effectively learn how to deal with the daily stresses, how to manage things like my physical health. As we heard in the definition, the physical, mental, and emotional health is what self-care is about. And for me, it was a journey of self-exploration. I think that one of the things that became most apparent through all of my journey is I had to learn to step back and really understand where my values lied and see if it was something that was serving me. I know that sounds very high level and it's kind of, it may not make a lot of sense, but if I looked at the fact that, just getting by was all that I valued, I had to say to myself, well, is that enough? Because, I look at a lot of things in my life and I still have areas I neglect when it comes to certain things. And you end up paying for it. I look at my house, look at my car sometimes, and I neglect things. But you know something? Taking care of my physical, myself, has been the best thing I've ever done for me. And let's talk about some of those things. So, the first thing I did, when I started on my health journey is I started focusing on my eating habits and my physical activity. Fantastic place to start. I will tell you, there is a whole, there's more of a package to that I soon learned over time. But for those of you who know my story, when I started to take care of my physical health, when I started to lose weight, started to feel better, when my physical health problems started to diminish, when my high blood pressure and sleep apnea and those things started to diminish, I felt better mentally and physically. Fantastic. In fact, I felt better than I ever had probably my whole entire adult life. I was on top of the world, especially for that first year after I had, I'm going to say, quote, ended my physical transformation. What I realized when I got towards the end, or got to the end, is I started to struggle again. And I started, some of those things that were bothering me before, although I had the health habits, I was getting up, I was exercising, eating right. In fact, in some ways, I was probably becoming too much of a fanatic, which you've heard me talk about before, that sort of healthy balance. But nonetheless, I was realizing that it wasn't enough. And what became real apparent is there was a few more things that were still haunting me that I had to take care of. And it wasn't enough to just ride on the coattails of the physical transformation. I had to take care of my mental health. Now, certainly you've heard me talk about hiking, and that's probably one of my biggest therapies. My best therapist is the woods. And I learned to enjoy the experience more and get out in nature and just be part of it. And my hikes changed from, aggressive physical activities into nature experiences where I learned to just listen to the birds, listen to the breeze through the leaves, flow of water down streams, and just how therapeutic that was in being present. You often hear, if you're one that follows folks who do meditation, that's meditation, one of the things that's central to that is becoming present. What does that mean? Being present means being here in the here and now, not worrying about the future, not reminiscing over the past and worrying, being here and now and experiencing life. And that, to me, has been just absolutely essential. I started to do some research and I looked up meditation. And as you've heard me mention, that's another piece that I did. So now, as part of my self-care routine, I get up and for me, I also like to incorporate a spiritual aspect to it. I read scripture in the morning, first thing. I come downstairs, I use the bathroom, get my coffee, I sit down and I read scripture. Because for me, that helps me kind of start my day. Read something positive, read something that's uplifting, kind of feed the mind and the spirit, right? Especially that. And then next I do a meditation routine. I spend a couple of minutes. I have a guided meditation. There's many of them out there. You can certainly message me about the one I'm using, and you can probably find a whole bunch of them out there, apps for your phone that can help you. Meditation is a simple thing. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated, but as I said, it's one of those things that helps you be present and focusing less on the future and focusing less on the past and just being present at the moment, because it clears sort of those cobwebs in the mind and it allows you to kind of just relax, and you'll feel it. It's amazing. I certainly wasn't one of those people in the past that believed in these things, but it was one of those kind of aha moments that, I was at a point in my life where I was willing to try anything. Now, this is not to say I didn't do other things, and I still do other things to help with my mental health. I've seen mental health professionals and still do when I need to, especially when I find that my life is at a point that I need somebody to talk to, or I talk to clergy, or I talk to friends, family. So it's very important to take care of your mental health and your spiritual health. And then after I do that, I go and do my exercise. And I do this every morning. And for me, there's a couple things that I do. It's very simple. I do about a half an hour's worth. I either, on most days, I'm doing a strength training and slight aerobic activity. I focus on that because I find that to be very effective for my physical health. And it's also helpful for your mental health because you usually feel better. And I do a couple days of stretching and or yoga activities. And again, those can be seen as meditation opportunities too, especially if you're, and I've been guilty of this, working through some of these sessions and focusing on other things. But now I'm working on being more present in those so that I can, take the benefits again of meditation and being aware and focusing on each of the moves that I'm doing, whether it's yoga and just kind of being present, feeling how my body feels, feeling the awareness of where I am. Fantastic things. These self-care techniques that I've learned to incorporate into my daily life, which, by the way, I never skip. I do modify them from time to time, but I never skip them, no matter where I am, whether I'm traveling or on a cruise ship or down visiting my family. I do them. I always do them first thing in the morning. And even if I don't execute them exactly the same, the basics of them are always the same, so that I continue this sort of legacy of self-care. And what has it helped me with? Well, it's helped me with a lot of things. Number one, I don't take any medications for mental health at all. I had it years ago, but I find that the best thing to do for me, and this is not to put down any of those things, but I find that the best thing to do for me is to learn to deal with the root of the problem. And often the root of the problem, at least in my case, has been the way I manage my thoughts and the way I deal with stress and problems and kind of framing those things. And when I take care of myself, I'm better able to deal with the stress. And I've had, like many of you, some pretty stressful things happen over the past year. Deaths in the family, very big financial stressors, work changes, a lot of things. And each time I focused more on that self-care. And I think if I didn't have that routine of self-care, I probably would have spiraled down into my pit of despair as I have in the past. In fact, when I think about some of the things I've dealt with over the past years and having this routine of self-care, I don't even know if I'd be here, because I think that when you don't take care of yourself and your frame of mind is not in the best place, you make poor decisions, or more likely to. At least I'm speaking for myself. And it just leads to another spiral of, heading down a path where you don't see any hope. Now, I see nothing wrong with seeking help. And as I said, I do seek it. And I am, however, the guy that if I seek help and I can't find the help I need, I'll just figure it out myself. I did that with my weight loss. I've done that with some of my mental health aspects here. This is not to say that I haven't had help in it. I did see therapists over the past several months here where I've been working through some of the things that I've dealt with. But for the most part, the responsibility came down to me. Me taking those steps to enlist help, me taking those steps to make changes, it came down to me. Now, this is not to say, there's anything wrong with, some of the help that's out there. But if you find that you can't get the help you need, then try to figure it out on your own. I highly recommend, if you're in a place where you need advice, certainly seek it from a professional. If you need advice on, let's just say, exercise, or see a physical fitness professional, a fitness professional. If you need mental health help, see a mental health professional. Medical advice, see a medical professional. You get what I'm saying. Okay? I'm not going to go down the whole list. Spiritual, right? Those are good things. But again, the responsibility comes down to you, and you making that choice to take charge of your own life and your health. Again, as I said earlier, not taking care of these things, neglecting them, affects your ability to function optimally. And if you're not functioning optimally, okay, you're going to end up with health problems, health with your body, health with your mind, health in the spirit. All those things are going to suffer. And it takes you, your decisions, your actions to break that cycle, not anyone else. There's nobody here until you make the decision that's going to be able to save you. You have probably family and friends, if you're one of those people, because I certainly did, who will reach out to you, maybe beg you or plead with you to change, to seek help. But it's ultimately you. It's got to make the decision, you to agree, you to be willing to go through the work that it takes. Now, don't be afraid of the work, because the work of dealing with these things ineffectively chisels away at your life. And there are people I'm sure you care about. If you're listening to this right now, that there's somebody out there that cares. I care about you. And some of you, I don't even know you, but I care about you. So, there are people out there who care. And so it's important for your own self to feel good. You deserve to feel good, but it takes you to do that. It takes you to think about what you're doing in each day to self-care. I said that kind of funny, but you know what I mean? What are you doing to take care of yourself each day? Now, I'm not telling you that the things I do are right for you. You've got to find what those things are, but I'm going to tell you some things to consider. I'm going to recap some of the things that I did and what I suggest for you. If you're not feeling well physically, mentally, spiritually, here's the things that I suggest. If you're not feeling well mentally, obviously, start with a health professional, a mental health professional. Start with some meditation. Learn how to relax. Sometimes it's just a walk. You get the physical aspect right there. Take a walk. You're feeling stressed. You feel like you're going to lose it. It's amazing. My wife has found with me, she knows those nights. And again, I want to point out, because it's not the fact that I don't ever have to deal with these things. It's in how I'm dealing with these things. And Terry knows when Mike is starting to freak out a little bit and stress out, let's take a walk. Okay? And here's a big secret, and I'm not leaving it a secret because I tend to be transparent about this. A lot of those hikes you see with Terry with me, especially after work, those are times Terry's like, hey, let's take a walk, because she knows Mike is struggling. And it's the truth. Exercise, also very important. It doesn't have to be much. It could just be a walk. Fantastic for your body, fantastic for your mind. And if you can do it in nature, even better. Studies have shown that getting out into nature has a therapeutic effect on your overall well-being. And I highly recommend it if you can, because it's one of those things. That's the whole tenet. That's what Hike with Mike is all about. It's promoting that awareness. Okay. So, we could do a whole other show on that. And, the other thing I recommend is just making it a routine. And one of the things they talk about habits, and I apologize, this podcast is a little longer today, but one of the things they talk about habits is anchoring a new habit to a already established habit. So I'll give you an example. And this is why I like to do it first thing in the morning. I get up in the morning, every morning, right? We all do, or maybe you get up in the afternoon, depending on your schedule. Doesn't matter. You get up at some point. but I get up early enough. I worked into my time to have an hour to do the self-care routine in the morning. Okay. First one is, I get up. We all usually have to do this. I use the bathroom. Okay. And then I go and the behavior starts. This is where you anchor the behavior. I make coffee. And then right after that, I go and I start the self-care routine. I take the coffee into my office. I sit down in my corner chair comfortably, and I read the scriptures, and I meditate. And then I go downstairs and I do the exercise. And the exercise, some days I'm on and some days I'm not, but I always go through it. I mean, there's some days where I'm supposed to lift weights and I'm feeling sore, I'm feeling tired, and I just go downstairs to my weight area and maybe I stretch or maybe I just move around a little bit. But I still go through it. And the reason is it's more important for me to stay within the habit and keep on the schedule than it is to me to execute it perfectly every single time. Now, this is not to say that I just go through the motions. I do put an effort in doing my best, but I stay with the habit because that, to me, is central to my best health. I hope you found this podcast today to be useful. If you have questions for me or would like to talk to me further about it, please reach out to Mike at MikeInspiresMe.com. I hope you're doing well. Do something today for you, for your self-care and your health. Hope you're doing well. Get out there today, enjoy the day, and stay awesome. Hey friends, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mike Inspires Me podcast. Stay tuned for future episodes and check out some of the past ones you may have missed. For more information on me and my story, go to MikeInspiresMe.com. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Mike Harrington Official and on Twitter at Mike Inspires Me. Stay healthy and stay awesome.